Welcome to Working Lunch, the Chamber's weekly series where we talk with community leaders, getting to know the person behind the work and the important things they are delivering. I'm Jim D'Antona, CEO of the San Luis Chamber. Today, we'll be having a conversation with the executive director of the Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and its downtown hothouse, John Townsend. The CIE's Hothouse is a space that attracts and supports the most vibrant talent and promising innovators and entrepreneurs, not just students, but in the broader community as well, in an effort to build a unique and passionate startup culture in San Luis Obispo. The community space was created through the efforts of Cal Poly, the city and county of San Luis Obispo, the business community, and the Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, when each of those groups recognized the benefits of an off-campus location to support students and community members as they work to create new innovations and start business ventures. In addition to the downtown SLO location, they also operate the Hothouse Annex, which houses a number of hardware-oriented companies such as Flume and Dioro Devices, as well as their new Ag Tech Incubator program located in North County at the Paso Sandbox. I'm looking forward to talking with John about how his experience has shaped his view of entrepreneurship, recent investment trends, and the critical role entrepreneurs, students, and Cal Poly play in our economy. John, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me. Welcome, everybody.
As everyone settles into lunch, where are you zooming in from today?
Well, I'm actually at the Hothouse. I'm in one of our conference rooms. And for those who don't know where we are, haven't been here, we're located right above the Ross store in downtown between Higuera and Monterey.
It's a fabulous space if folks haven't seen it before, really getting a lot of great things done there. So since your role as an advisor is kind of dependent upon your professional experience, can you take us on a quick journey from your graduation at Cal Poly right up to your coming back as the executive director of the CIE Hothouse?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. And you know, it's been 40 years. Actually, October 5th, I started with the consulting group that ultimately became Accenture. And that's where I began my career as a management consultant. Had an opportunity really to kind of help work with and advise a lot of different companies. And that consulting group was really focused on, you know, the global 1,000 companies, the Fortune 500 in the US, so very large scale companies. And it was a fantastic career, but I ultimately ended up joining a group where we refocused our market practice on the emerging companies, those that we were, considering early stage to middle market companies. And that was a chance for me to work really with founders who actually had the original inspiration and the idea around the business. And I absolutely fell in love with working with companies in that segment. So I've been involved in entrepreneurship really as an advisor. And then, as they say, so oftentimes, a consultant needs to validate their worth by actually, walking a mile in their client's shoes. So I engaged with an alumni from Cal Poly that I knew back when we were both here, and Jeff Wittes and I started a business. It was focused on the hospitality space, where I had quite a bit of experience. And before you had DoorDash, Grubhub, and all the online ordering apps, we actually built a mobile app that did that, plus also had frequent, customer rewards programs and so forth, and had some pretty good success with that company. So as kind of contrary to what a lot of people believe, I was kind of a mid-career entrepreneur, absolutely loved the experience, did another startup, as a lot of entrepreneurs do. Once you get a taste, you become this serial entrepreneur. Did a second startup, and then ultimately ended up retiring. My wife, Hillary, and I, who we met at Cal Poly, decided to relocate back to the Central Coast. And then I was introduced to the Cal Poly CIE and was a lead mentor for one of the teams, back in 2015, and absolutely fell in love with being able to work with young entrepreneurs, Cal Poly quality students that really wanted to make an impact and saw entrepreneurship as a way to do that. And from there, I was introduced to John York, who was one of the co-founders of the CIE 11 years ago. And John invited me into the classroom, and I became an adjunct faculty lecturer in the entrepreneurship program. And then when my predecessor stepped out of the executive director role at the CIE, I was asked to step in on an interim basis, and then now actually took the role full time, which was just a little under 3 years ago. So that's 40 years in a nutshell.
And there's so much to unpack. There's so many great things. You talked a little bit there about there being a prevailing idea, I guess, of a startup entrepreneur being that college graduate who builds something in his garage and launches from there, versus the mid-career startup. Which is the typical sketch of an entrepreneur that you've worked with, or as you've seen it work?
Well, being a university-based center for entrepreneurship, certainly we see a heavier concentration of entrepreneurs that are that proverbial top ramen eating, starving college student that says, why not be an entrepreneur now? I've got nothing really to lose. So we see a heavy concentration of that here locally in San Luis Obispo. But realistically, most entrepreneurs have a work experience somewhere else, working with someone else. It could be a startup, it could be a more established company. But they never lose that fire. They never lose that interest of wanting to come back and actually give it a shot themselves. So most entrepreneurs, believe it or not, tend to be more mid-career, late 30s, early 40s. They take that work experience, that life wisdom. They have an idea that might have been percolating for quite some time. They may even leave a company with a couple of other coworkers that form the nucleus of that startup team. So that, when you look really at the predominance in the startup world on a national, global level, that's more typical. But certainly in San Luis Obispo, being a town with a significant university like Cal Poly, and a center that really supports students to give it a shot, whether they fail or not, we see a predominance of earlier stage entrepreneurs.
It definitely starts to ask that, or beg the question of, maybe since you first started consulting, has the idea of what a startup is or needs to be successful changed?
It has totally changed. The old school version was, you had some really smart people with an idea. They'd go into a garage and build a solution and roll up the door, and the world beat a path to it, right? And they were eminently successful. I mean, we've got many examples, as people know. But really, the contemporary version of how you start it up is you flip that script and you start with the market, and you look to the customers who have a need that's unfulfilled. You look for a market opportunity where, if you go in with a different solution, you could disrupt a historically mom and pop intense focused market, and you could ultimately end up creating some startup opportunities there. So then you go build the solution for it. And that's all what we call kind of the lean startup methodology. And we absolutely teach that on campus. And that methodology pervades all of our programming, including what we teach during our summer accelerator and into the incubator and so forth. And the other thing that's changed, so not only kind of the approach to a startup, but the other thing that's changed is, being an entrepreneur is like the hot thing, right? And so many of our younger generations want to make an impact in this world, and they see the quickest path to do that is go build a company yourself, as opposed to maybe going to work for somebody else. There's no right, wrong answer, right? So the predominance of people that are beginning their career go to work for somebody else. And that's absolutely incredibly valuable experience. And in many cases, that's the beginning and the end of a career path. But the younger generation, they want to make a difference in the world. They're not necessarily satisfied to sit back and accept the world as somebody else has scripted it. They want to write their own. And the way to do that is go start your own company. Team yourself up with a bunch of people that you want to surround yourself with, and go out there and make a difference.
Well, your passion for startups and supporting entrepreneurs is tangible, even through a Zoom screen here. Are there certain ingredients, elements that make you most excited to be working in this arena?
Yeah, this is the funnest job I've ever had. And I wasn't intending to fail at retirement and jump back into the fray, but I love every day. And the reason is, you're working with young people whose brightest days are ahead of them. They're their enthusiasm and optimism is infinite and endless, right? I mean, if you ever have a bad day, I just literally walk away from my desk and I go find the closest team of people that are working on something. I say, tell me what's up, tell me a story. How did your day go today? And, it's a roller coaster, right? Some days you catch them and they're down in the dumps, and other days they're literally jumping out of their seats because something they found and believed was true is now been validated as true, and they feel like they're off to the races. And they're solving problems in so many needed areas, whether it's new technology in medicine, whether it's something to help curb the climate influence and the climate change, whether it's improving the quality of life for people, or just having more fun, right? It doesn't have to be serious, dark, really heavy type problems that they're solving. But it's a group of young people, both out of Cal Poly and from within our community, that really are out there intentfully solving important problems. And man, it's addictive. You hang with them for a period of time, and it's hard not to get enthused.
Well, since its inception, the CIE Hothouse has really grown and changed the what and scale of work. But I understand that the mission really has stayed the same. Can you talk a little bit about the mission and how it manifests itself in the work you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So when John York and Lou Ternotsky established the CIE 11 years ago, they intentionally put the center at the confluence of Cal Poly and the community. Their intent was, we need to support the community and the economic development in our region. We need to provide a pathway for the faculty and the students that are creating innovation and creating change from the university through research and the work that happens on campus, and get it out into the community and really have it be a point of pride for our community. So the Hothouse is downtown, right? We're not on campus because, we want the students that come here to feel like this is the real world. It's not, you're on campus. And we want the community to know that this isn't just Cal Poly. This is all of us throughout the region in San Luis Obispo. So what's changed is the level of impact we've been able to have, the momentum we have behind us, the awareness that the community has about what we do, the fact that the REACH organization has really established the blueprint for economic development throughout the region. And we play right into that as the startup, scale up execution engine that's really here to help create those companies and scale up those companies. So that's changed just really in a direction that we all hoped it would. The other thing that we're starting to see is with the pandemic, which has been an influence, a lot more people know about us on the Central Coast. And when I say us, I don't mean just the CIE, I mean San Luis Obispo and the startup community we have. And the fact that our elected officials and our community leaders support the startup community, and it's sincere. It's not just talk. They really help us with financing, with wisdom, with time, services, and the outside world sees that and they get that and they want to be a part of that. So we're starting to see more people come and opt in to supporting our program, and we're starting to see companies from outside the region and even outside the U.S. wanting to set up shop here. Sometimes they see ag tech and the Cal Poly connection. Sometimes they see aerospace and the Vandenberg connection. But we're on the map, and we have a chance to really kind of formulate the economy as we want it to look like going forward.
You talked in there, which was interesting, the idea about putting the Hothouse in a space that, again, real world. And I mentioned a bit in the intro that the CIE Hothouse isn't just for students. Can you tell us maybe, are there some of the other individuals and companies you serve, and are you getting folks who maybe aren't even part of Cal Poly directly as students kind of being a part of the Hothouse?
Absolutely, we do. I mean, I can kind of just look outside the conference room here around me, and the Hothouse is it's 15,000 square feet, again, above the raw space, and it's split really almost evenly in three components. So there's a co-working space, and that's place, of business for individuals who might be remote workers, where the house doesn't fit their needs. It's not a conducive, productive environment. They might want to rent a desk for a day, or they might want to reserve a desk for them on a month-to-month basis, or they might be a small company that no longer needs the size of square footage that they once had, because they're more of a hybrid mode. So they'll set up shop here. They'll be in an office behind a closed door with a 3 to 5 person company. So that's the co-working space, and that's traditional co-working space. And it's very conducive, productive. There's a community around it of collaborators that, really benefit from working alongside others that might be in similar situations. We have networking events. We bring in outside speakers. So it's a really collaborative, conducive environment to launching a company or being a remote worker. We don't feel so isolated, or really scaling up your company where maybe you don't want to go rent your own space. There's a month-to-month commitment as opposed to a long-term lease. So that's really a third of what we do. The other third houses our incubator and our accelerator teams and companies. So these are very early stage companies that are in a program that they applied and were accepted into. And we bring all kinds of resources to help them: access to funding, access to experts, access to community leaders like, Carmel and Akasha for legal services, and Tom Liebens for intellectual property, and Pacific Premier Bank and Wells Fargo, Bank of America. CESLOC, a lot of these community companies and leaders that provide services specifically designed to help put the odds in the favor of these young companies. And then really the third space is an event space, and that is heavily utilized, not so much during COVID because of the restrictions, but it's 5,000 square feet of event space, right? We host, appetizer, cocktail, networking spaces. We do training seminars. We do company meetings. It's open to the city and the county, and they'll, in many cases, have planning meetings here. And they're very important supporters of our program. And so that's physically what we have going here at the Hothouse downtown.
You talked a little bit in there about an accelerator, because I've heard it, the Hothouse and CIE as part of it as an accelerator program. Some refer to it as an incubator, but it's in reality, it's both, right? Can you give us a little insight as to what the difference is between that is?
Yeah, so there's kind of a pipeline of evolution of a company. So if a company really is coming out of the community, they'll go into our incubator program, and that is a 2-year program. There's an in-person and a virtual version, and there's kind of a core program where it's companies that are in industries where maybe we haven't added particular emphasis, or they might go into one of our vertical incubators, which is the ag tech incubators at the Paso Sandbox in North County, the aerospace and aeronautics incubator that's being established in Grover Beach, or MedTech incubator, or the Clean Tech incubator that are right here at the Hothouse downtown. And they get so they tend to be companies. They actually are incorporated. In many cases, they have very initial traction in customers and revenues, but they need more of an insulary, protected type of an environment to give them a little more runway, a little more odds of being a success before they scale up and venture out. Once they graduate from that program, then they go take space in the community, build, we've got many examples, White Fox, Mantis, that are out there, with pretty large commercial spaces that, they operate their business out of. Preceding that incubator, where we have companies, we actually have teams. So these very early stage, and they go through the accelerator program. And that's predominantly Cal Poly students and teams coming off of campus, where they spend 13 weeks in the summer trying to prove out their idea. And if they're successful, they'll graduate into the incubator. So yes, we have both. They're two differently distinct programs, but one feeds into the other.
It seems one of the maybe most important events that happens every year around this is AngelCon. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what the event is and its importance for these startups, and maybe a quick definition of what an angel is.
Yeah, very good, Jim. So Judy Mahan runs our community programming. So that includes the incubator program, and we're a small business development center for really the Central Coast. And as many of you may know, during the pandemic, Judy's team was right on the ground helping support businesses with access to funding, repurposing and structuring their business model to survive in a more of a virtual, online world. One of the programs Judy runs is AngelCon for Angel Conference, and it is really a regional angel conference where we have angel investors who are typically individuals. They have a level of net worth where they can put some of their investment money into higher risk investments. Early stage companies certainly are higher risk investments. They may or may not have had experience being an angel investor. So AngelCon every year really kind of attracts a group of angel investors. They form a fund by individually writing checks into the fund, and then they go through the process of learning how to be an angel investor, and ultimately then having about a dozen companies vie for $125,000 to $150,000 in equity funding coming out of that angel fund. So it's a great way for community individuals who want to become an angel investor or who want a vehicle for their angel investment to really support those early stage companies that are trying to get funding and be successful and stay here and build a business in our region.
And it's so important. First time I ever got to be a part of one was when I came up here, and it was amazing to see both from the idea of being an angel investor, but also getting to see, the top companies that are starting to put things together and hear their pitch and the thought process that goes into it. It's really amazing. I would recommend to everybody, if you haven't been a part of the AngelCon, that always try to get a chance to be a part of that, because it's so interesting. So I'm wondering if there are things the community can do to make it a little easier or better, in addition to angel investing, to startups and slow, or is angel investing a great way to kind of do that?
Well, if you're in a position where you want to learn about and maybe consider becoming an angel investor, absolutely. Getting involved in that AngelCon angel investment community is wonderful. And as you said, Jim, it's a chance to learn a little bit about how to do that, but also you get exposed to a lot of peers of the community that are also involved in AngelCon. So you see, it's a great professional networking opportunity and really engage with the community. And then you also get to get exposure to these great companies. And that's inspiring to see what we're creating here on the Central Coast. And I'm always amazed that, I kind of go home at night and I go, wow, we're really doing some neat things here in the community and in the region. So that's a great way to get exposed. Also, time and wisdom is something we benefit from. We have a mentor network where really you're giving back in the form of your time. And we always need advice for the companies we're supporting. In some cases, it might be serving as a member of their advisory council or corporate board. It could just be being a mentor where you can actually come in and hold office hours where you provide advice on whatever your specialty is. It could be legal, it could be supply chain, it could be marketing, it could be how to hire and motivate a team from HR. There's always, as our director of development, Corey Carpin, says, time, talent, and treasure. We always need all three, and everybody kind of decides what's best for them.
Time, talent, and treasure. That is a great way of framing up how to, be a part of it. And really interesting in that I'm interested from our slow economy. How do startups fit into that from your perspective?
Well, it's a real strategically important component of any economy, particularly in one like we have in our Central Coast region, where we are able to really design what do we want it to look like. And you really have two choices, right? Okay, do we want to be ag tech, med tech, aerospace? I mean, what kind of makes sense for us? Where do we want to build our brand around kind of the cornerstone of our economy? And if anybody wants to know kind of what that's looking like, you should go take a look at the blueprint that Reach and Melissa James and her organization has put together. It's fantastic. It really kind of lays out what we want to become. And a startup scale up operation like the CIE is critical, because that's where you're creating the future companies, as opposed to only trying to be able to attract external companies to come into our region. And those startup companies, in many cases, have the highest potential for growth and the longest runway for being successful, and to create the kind of jobs that we really want in our community, and provide the opportunity for our people that are here across the entire spectrum of the economy and the income levels. So the startups and the scale ups, which is what we do, is critical to any economy, particularly like ours, where we're creating it as we go, and we are executing on that blueprint that we've set forth for ourselves.
Well, and the Central Coast has, for my time being here, feels like there's this, has long been like a start it yourself type of place. What do you attribute that culture to? Is it our size? Is it, again, the influence of the school?
Yeah, well, in any economy like ours, where we have a relatively, rural community, the joke was always, when you graduated from Cal Poly, you had to pick north or south or return to the valley, right? But you weren't going to stay. And there were those few who were able to figure that out, like Jeff Buckingham. God bless him. He figured it out, but it was hard. And but most of us had to leave. And the joke was also that if you came to this area, you better bring the job with you. Or if you were lucky enough to get a job, then boy, if you had a spouse or significant other, getting a second job is really tough. So we absolutely need to create more of the businesses that can really support the type of careers and jobs that we need in the Central Coast, and to not only be able to allow people to stay here, but we graduate an incredible world-class talent out of Cal Poly every year, and in some cases, their path is elsewhere. But for those that want to stay, and a lot do, we need to give them an opportunity to do that, and that's what we're really trying to do.
What trends are you seeing, now and then kind of into the future around startups and the investment community?
Yeah, well, it's much more, the investment community and the startup community is much more entrenched, right? It's a part of any healthy economy, and you can look around this anywhere in the country. And if you look at those places where they're really clicking on all cylinders, they've got a pretty healthy startup community. And we have that here in San Luis. Now, we're still pretty early, but we have because we're such a desirable place to live, we attract world-class talent, and they come from Silicon Valley, from Southern California. So we have, venture capitalists, we have business leaders, community leaders that really come here because they want to be here, and they want this community to be where they continue and end their career and raise their families, retire, whatever that is. So we attract a level of talent, kind of above our, fighting weight or punching weight. It's an old analogy, but we really do. We have so we can pick and choose. We can be who we want to be and be a little bit selective. And I think we should, right? There's a lot of people that don't want to grow into what they came from, whether it's North, South, Southern California. I know, I get that. But we don't have to. We can be intelligent about what we build here as our community. And that's part of what we are very cognizant of at the CIE.
And looking at those companies that are coming in, do you see, are you seeing a lot more around climate, or you talked a little about ag tech and in trying to, for food production, water, what are some of those issues, or people looking to kind of maybe disrupt on?
Yeah, it's great. I love talking with Judy Mayhem, because she's the one focused on what's happening in the economy. And almost every day she'll come to me and go, we've got this company that's, building vertical indoor growing systems, and they want to be part of the Paso Sandbox. And we've got this company that is figuring out how to put satellites attached to the rockets we're launching in Vandenberg, and they want to be near Vandenberg, and they want to take advantage of the talent coming and out of Cal Poly, whether it's faculty, research, or students graduating. And so we've got all the components of these leading industries, across the 4 segments that I talked about. And those companies that want to be a part of that, they're either starting it here or they're coming here because they want to be a part. And it's amazing, talking to Rick Stolmeyer, that we have an amazing drone community here. I mean, we've got companies that are building some really cool stuff. And that's obviously something that's going to be important in the future of all of the economies. And to have heavy lift drones like Inspired Flight right here in our own backyard, I mean, that's the kind of company you really want to have here and keep here in the community.
Well, and pre-pandemic, I would talk to folks about venture capitalists and what they wanted to see out of startups here, and kind of forcing them to go Bay Area or LA, as a critical ingredient to getting that in attention investment. But listening to what you're saying, like, it looks like maybe the pandemic helped get some people to find the Central Coast, maybe get a little bit more open to the idea that they could focus at, or is it still pretty ingrained to try to get people to go north or south?
There's still a lot of that influence, right? And on a scale, we're not there. So there's still reasons why companies need to leave and go be near, the VC firm that just, invested in their large, series round. But what we're seeing is some of that money is now here. And the second factor is, and this is pretty prevalent, is those where the money is, they don't necessarily need to see the company there. Matter of fact, they might want the company to be elsewhere because they don't have to then grapple with quite the level of the cost of living, the cost of housing, the quality of life that are becoming a little more challenged in some of those communities. So in some cases, they're like, hey, stay right where you are. If that's where the talent is and that's where you are, stay there. And they're more than happy to come down to a board meeting and stay at the Slow Hotel or the Cerro or any of our other properties because they love coming here. So it kind of works.
There's so many interesting things happening at Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship's Hothouse there. Where can people go to find out more and how to engage with the CIE Hothouse?
Yeah, so a couple of ways. Online, go to our website. And Jim, I think you're going to share that out with everybody. We have all kinds of information and ways to engage with what we do. The other is just come on by. We'd love to see you at the Hothouse. We give tours all the time. We're masked up and COVID, safe at this point. So forgive us for having to, enforce those restrictions. But come by. It's a great place to see. Go to the website and you'll see all kinds of ways to get involved, and we hope you do.
And for those who haven't found it yet, it is a little bit like a secret door on Higuera Street there. But if you go past Ross there, you can find it, and beautiful space, seeing some really incredible things happening there. And John, I'm so appreciative of all the time you spend here. We always end our conversation every week with a question of, what are you looking forward to this weekend?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And thanks for having me. Appreciate everybody joining us today. So my wife, Hillary, and I are new grandparents. So we're going to be spending the weekend with our granddaughter, and we're going to get the spoiling started this weekend. So thanks for asking.
That's fabulous. Congratulations to you both. That's a great way to spend a weekend. It's been so terrific being able to learn more about you and the Cal Poly CIE Hothouse. For those of you watching, if you have questions, you can add them into the Facebook comments. We did drop in the link there. So go ahead and click over to it to find a little bit more about the Hothouse. And if you have some questions, John and his team may be able to hop in when they get a chance and get a moment. John, once again, thank you so much for being here today.
By all means, thanks for having me, and be well, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, all of you, for tuning in. We hope to see you next Friday at noon for another working lunch. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay healthy and safe out there.